Welcome to the ultimate beginner's course for the Verse programming language. This is all about code. And if you've never written a line of code in your life, this is for you, because I'm not only teaching you the Verse programming language, I'm gonna teach you how to code, and you can take that knowledge with you anywhere, to any programming language. Maybe later down the line, you can get a job doing this, and all you need is a keyboard and a mouse. Well, and a computer, and a video card, and only on Windows, and the Epic Games launcher, and Fortnite, and Unreal editor for Fortnite. But aside from all of that, you're good to go. Okay, first things first. Get the Epic Games launcher. This is free on the Epic Games website, all right? The next thing you need is Fortnite. Search for Fortnite and download it, install it. Then we need UEFN. Just search for UEFN, and you're gonna see it right here. Click on this, then install. I already have it installed. Okay, easy peasy. Next, you're gonna need Visual Studio Code. This is an IDE, or Integrated Development Environment. It's what we're actually gonna write our code in. That's code.visualstudio.com, and it's also free. Okay, once those are installed, load up the Unreal editor for Fortnite. You can do that by just going into here and clicking launch, or launch it from here. Eventually, it'll show up here automatically. You can also create a shortcut on your desktop. Now, let me tell you how this course works. There's going to be a series of videos about different topics, and they are designed to be watched in that specific order so you can learn line upon line and precept upon precept as you grow in the code. And some topics are more complicated than others, and I've carefully structured this so you can learn at the best and easiest pace possible while still making progress, while not confusing yourself. And so, without further ado, let's get started. So you have it all installed now. When you launch the Unreal editor for Fortnite, you're gonna see a new project screen. And we're gonna keep it super simple because we're only focused on code. So click Island Templates, blank, and on the project name, we're gonna call this Learning Verse. That's the name of your project. Don't worry about anything else, and go ahead and click Create. Now you're gonna see a screen similar to this. You may have a content browser, you may not. I'll click the X on this, and you can open your content browser by clicking Content Drawer, and you'll see it there. I like to dock mine in the layout, so I have it available all times, and that's what you're gonna see right there. And if I right click in this viewport here, I can look around. We're not gonna spend a lot of time on the editor because we're focused on code, but you can move around using your normal arrow keys or A, D, S, W on your keyboard here to look around and move and such. Okay, pretty simple there. And there we go. So here's our editor. Now what's really cool is you can click Launch Session, and it's gonna load Fortnite Editor, the game, and you can actually play your level right here that fast, that easy. But we're here to write code, and I'm not gonna do that, but you can if you've never done it before and you just wanna get the high of building your first game, just click that button, and then it'll work. So we're gonna learn to write code. Specifically, we're gonna talk about variables today. So how do we do that? We are going to go to Verse Explorer, okay? It'll pop open on your window here, or if your layout is docked, you can drag it as a tab like I did here. We are going to create a new script. So I'm gonna right click and say Add New Verse File to Project. And we're gonna call this one lesson_01 and click Create. Don't click Create Empty. If you did click Create Empty, don't worry about it, just delete that file and create a new one. So you're gonna see lesson01.verse. But if I look over here in my project, I really don't see anything going on there. So we need to fix that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this Verse button, and it's gonna open my Verse project in Visual Studio Code, which is an IDE, Integrated Development Environment. And I'm gonna click lesson01.verse. That's the file we created. And I'm gonna get rid of this welcome screen. And here we go. Here's our code. And I'm gonna walk you through a few things in here just to kind of get a lay of the land. So using here at the top is importing modules written by other developers, specifically in our case, written by Epic Games. I'm gonna drag this window to close it here. And what we're saying is, hey, I want to use the code that somebody else wrote. They've created a module for us. And it's important to know because we're using Fortnite.com/devices. This is a specific module of code written to support what's called Fortnite devices. It's game features. This is not the verse language, but features written in the verse language that we are using or that we want to use. And right here is our class name. So I named it the same as our file name. It does that by default automatically. Your file name can be different from your class name, just so you know, but I tend to keep them the same. All right, we'll talk about classes later. Lesson 01, that's the word you typed in. And we're using a creative device. And this is gonna allow our code to be dragged into the editor and compiled. In a normal situation with programming, you typically have a compiler that compiles code, and you don't need any crazy special huge programs like Unreal Engine to run that code. You just run it. But in our case here, as of right now, you have to run your verse code in UEFN, okay? So on begin, this is part of our creative device. It's code that was written for us already. We're overriding it, which means we're using it. You'll learn about this later too. And so basically this is gonna be fired when the game starts automatically for us. And we're doing a few things here. First off, you're gonna see this green hashtag here, all right? The pound sign. This is a comment. The compiler is going to skip that. You can write whatever you want in there. That has nothing to do with your code. It's just like a note, like inline notes. Then we're printing hello world, and then we're printing 2 + 2 equals curly braces 2 + 2 curly braces end quotes. If any of this is super scary, don't worry. We're going to take it nice and slow. But what's happening here is we're taking two numbers, integers, and we're combining them to give us 4. And then it's going to use what's called string interpolation to turn this into a string or words that can actually print to the screen. Just for fun, so we can say we wrote our first line of code, change this to 3 + 2. All right, 2 + 2 equals 3 + 2. Let's see if we can confuse ourselves. All right, I'm gonna save that file. So I just changed that number there. And what we're going to do is we're gonna go back to our editor, and we are going to go to verse, build verse code. It's going to compile the code for us. And I'm going to click Content Browser, and you're going to see a new folder now that wasn't there before called Creative Devices. All right, because in our code we subclassed from Creative Device, okay, since we're inheriting from this class here, we'll learn about that later. It allows our code to actually be dragged into the editor. We have to have a way for the Fortnite editor to know how to run our code, and that's how we're doing that right now. If I don't drag this in here, our code will not run. It'll compile, we just compile it, but it won't run. So I'm gonna drag our lesson 01, this verse class, into the editor. And it's made this really fun little device for us to look at. You can turn that off over here if you want, but I'll leave it there for now. This is going to allow our code to run. Now all I have to do is click Launch Session. This is going to take a very long time when you first do it, so go grab some popcorn and come back. While the game is building, I want to point out something very important that'll help you a ton. Okay, that is the Unreal Editor for Fortnite documentation. Okay, you can see the URL up here, dev.epicgames.com/documentation, UEFN Unreal Editor for Fortnite. You can just search UEFN documentation on Google, and it'll pull this up. This is going to give you tutorials, how to get started with the verse programming language, but most importantly, this one right here, verse language reference. I used this a lot when I was learning, and you can click on these and get the official definitions and wording and how all of this comes together, and actually look at your screen here to internalize it instead of a video that keeps moving forward. Very important information in here, highly useful. Bookmark this website. Okay, our game is here, but it's not running. So what we do is we press escape on the keyboard to start the game. If you can see on my screen, you can also click start game on the screen here and it'll do that, but I like to keep mine open. Now, if your screen is full screen, I would change it here in your Fortnite settings, change it to windowed mode, okay? So you can switch back and forth really easily. You don't have to do that though. You can keep it full screen if you like. I'm gonna click start game. Now nothing's going to happen. But here's the important part. If I press tab and I go to log, you're going to see hello world and 2 plus 2 equals 5. Now you guys are going to be like, yeah, Mark teaches people incorrect math. Well, just for fun. So it worked. Our code is working. And that's how you can know if your code is working, is you can print anything you want to the screen and it should show up here. And notice that the mathematical computation also worked, which is really awesome. So we know that's working. Tab, 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 it's still there. I'm gonna press escape and go to endgame. I'm gonna alt tab back to my editor. Here we are. So we've written our very first verse code, compiled it, and ran it in the game. Give yourself a pat on the back. Woo! That's super awesome. You're now a programmer. Technically, you programmed some code. Go tell your mom, hey mom, I wrote some code. Oh, you're a hacker? That's right, mom. I hacked Fortnite with incorrect numbers. Okay, so let's go back to our code here and let's do some more. So this is all about learning variables, and you need to understand that it's a building block of any programming language, including verse. And so I want you to picture an RPG game. In fact, all of our lessons are going to be based around games because that's what we're building here. And I want to create an RPG character, okay? So I'm just going to press enter here, and I'm going to be tabbing a lot, okay? Tabs are very important in verse. You're not going to see a lot of curly braces like you do in other programming languages. I'm going to say var player name colon string equals enter name here. Let's talk about a variable. So a variable is like a bucket that holds something. I want you to picture a garage, and you've got a big, huge tool chest, okay? And in it, it says Mark's Tools or Jennifer's Tools. That's the name you put on your box, so you know what's in it. Tools, right? Because we could have put something else in there. We could have put bottles of bubbles or bars of soap, right? But we put tools in ours, right? So what we're saying is give our toolbox a name, our bucket a name, and what's inside of it? Well, it's defined right here. In this case, a string for our player name. A string is like a word. It's a string of characters, letters, okay? And so we are taking a bucket named player name and calling it string. So in the case of the garage and the toolbox, Mark's Tools, I might have a wrench in there, I might have a screwdriver, I might have different types of things, but they are all tools. In that case, this might be something silly like the word tools. That's the type, okay? The name and the type. You only ever store in your bucket, your variable, something of that type. How terrible would it be if you had this super manly toolbox with wrenches and drills and all this stuff, and your dang kids, they take their stinking My Little Pony toys and Play-Doh and they shove it into your toolbox, right? It's not right. You can't do that. So you can't do that, all right? You have to have the type and then the things that you put into the bucket or the variable is of that type. So in our case here, string. We can only put string in here, we can't put numbers. So if I'm to put the number 1 here, it's gonna give me red squigglies. You can't do that. And it's very nice and lets us know that there's a problem. So that's cool. I'm gonna Control Z to undo that. So remember, we're thinking in terms of a video game. Like I've got a character and I want to give it a name. Remember, we use programming to solve problems. We're not just writing code for the sake of learning code. I know people who learn to code and they're doing it, and I'm like, why are you doing it? And they're like, I don't know, I just am doing it. But if you come in tackling a problem, you're gonna learn it way faster and it's gonna be more meaningful to you. So RPG player name. What else should a RPG character have? What about health? Var total health colon int equals 100. Okay, int is an integer. And again, if I change this to a string, it's gonna yell at me because I can't put a number in there. Notice how I undid that. I notice how that the string is inside of quotes here, okay? The string is inside of quotes. That's what specifies it as a string. But here, there's no quotes around the 100. Now, there's one more thing you need to note. That I am naming my names, my variable names here, with capital letters on each word. This is called Pascal casing. And I don't have to. You know, I could do all kinds of weird things, different things, and it's different in different programming languages. In verse, your variable names should look like this, okay? Pascal casing. And the type names are all lowercase. In some languages, it's different. In some languages, the type has a capital first letter and your variable name has a lowercase letters. Verse is like this. So start doing that now, okay? And the colon separates the variable from the type. That's just part of the syntax. You just have to memorize that. It'll take some time. Trust me, it'll take time. If you don't get any of this and it's hard and you can't remember, it's fine. It takes time. It takes people months or years to figure this stuff out sometimes, all right? So we've got player name and we've got total health. That's great. So we've got some variables that are storing data for our player, okay? Remember, buckets. Let's do another one, var attack damage. We need to know how strong our player is. I'm gonna say 100 on the attack damage as well. Press enter a few times. And notice I'm putting these up here towards the top of the file. I'm not putting them in the onBegin method or function, okay? We'll learn about those later. I'm just keeping it here at the top of the file. We're declaring variables and we're also initializing them. I'm not actually just doing that where I don't put a value into it. In verse, you always need to initialize your variables with data, okay? You can't just leave them hanging like that. And that's one of the benefits of the verse programming language. And you'll learn this over time as well too. A lot of people are looking at verse saying, I hate the syntax, it's so dumb, it's not as easy as JavaScript, because in JavaScript you can do anything you want, right? You don't even have to have a type in JavaScript, and you can just throw whatever junk in there you want. But by doing it this way, we're gonna prevent lots of bugs in our game and runtime errors or crashes. You ever had a game or an app and it crashed while you were playing? That's because they had a runtime error in most cases. And verse is trying really hard to remove any possibility for those types of crashes. Crashes will still happen, but just know that verse is a very good mannered language and it's fantastic. I love what they're doing with it. Okay, what else should a player have? How about money, okay? Instead of doing like coins though, where it's just like 1 or 2 or 3, let's do like kind of more like a monetary system, dollars and change or paper and change. I don't know what you call money in the various countries, but we're gonna say total money colon float, if I can spell, equals 0.0. A new keyword for you today, float. And what float means is there's floating point numbers. Just basically think of it as a decimal, okay? Floating point numbers. Pretty cool, right? So we've got whole numbers here and floating point numbers. So we've got a character in an RPG game and we've got some properties or values. Well, that's pretty dang awesome. We just wrote some more code. So in the onBegin function, I'm going to delete these 3 lines here. And make sure you keep your indentation here, okay? That's really important. And what I'm going to do is print the player name. Now notice how I didn't put anything in quotes in here into our print statement like last time. And that's because print knows how to turn variables, certain variables into strings. In this case, it already is a string, so it's easy for it to print, okay? But it knows how to do that with other things as well too. So that's pretty cool. We can print the player name and that would show on the screen. But let's do some more while we're here because, you know, no need to keep compiling and going back and forth. It's not that complicated at this point. So that will just print the name. But let's make it more readable. So I'm gonna say print name colon, it's not syntax, it's just a string. You can put anything here, blah, blah, blah. Say name, the curly braces, and now we're gonna say player name. This is string interpolation, and you saw this before with the numbers, the 2 plus 3 or 3 plus 2. It's gonna take our variable and it's going to take the value that's inside of it, okay? And it's gonna print it up. So if this was my toolbox in my garage and I printed it in here, you know, what would actually show up on the screen is, wrench, screwdriver, drill, all that manly stuff. That's what it would print to the screen, whatever's in your bucket, okay? What about numbers? Well, say print total health. What do you think we should do? You want to try and do it yourself first? If you did this, total health, you're right, curly braces inside of the strings. Now, if you get rid of that quote, you're going to have a syntax error. So make sure you put that quote back on there. So we're going to print the total health, and we'll print our attack damage. And the reason why I'm writing these words in here is just so it's more readable on the print screen. Okay, attack damage. All right, we're going to say print total money. And we'll put that variable in there as well too, total money. And that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and go back to our game, our editor. And whatever you do, do not click push changes. Do not click that. You're like, no, I clicked it already. When you push changes, it's going to push all your changes, including the editor changes, and it takes forever, like minutes. Okay, it can take minutes. Instead, go to verse, build verse code, or Control-Shift-B. If we only make code changes, we only want to compile the code. Click that, and now you're going to see a new button here that says push verse changes. This takes seconds. So back to the Fortnite game. All right, now I'm going to escape, start game, and press tab. Okay, enter name here. So that's what's in our name right now. So that printed name, enter name here. Total health 100, attack damage 100, total money 0. We broke, man. So we need to like get us some cash. So let's do that now. I'm gonna press escape, Alt Tab back over to our editor and then over to our Visual Studio Code. So I don't like how this says enter name here. This might be what you see at the starting of an RPG game, but let's pretend that the player actually entered in their name. How do we change a variable? We could maybe just say player name equals, John, but it doesn't like that. Because in verse, we need to specify whenever we are going to change or mutate data, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the set keyword. Player name equals, and the player just typed in their name, and we're going to say Glubnar the Destroyer. Maybe he's an ogre. Glubnar the Destroyer. Excellent. Okay, so then what we can do is give ourselves some cash money. So I'm going to say total money equals, oh no, guess what? We didn't put our set keyword. Got to do that. So set total money to equal, say 45.6. In our world, we've got crystals and, chips of crystals, which is our change, 45.6 total money. Now what we're going to do is print total money again, like so. And we'll go ahead and right before that, we'll print the name now as well too. Print name, player name, like so. Save it. Back to the editor, verse, build verse code, push verse changes. Escape, start game, and tab. You can also see it here on the top left, but it only stays there for a few seconds usually. Tab. So enter name here, 100, 100, total money 0, but then we change the name to Glubnar the Destroyer, and the very last one, total money is 45.6. So our code worked. We successfully, let's escape, we successfully modified our code using set, and we printed some strings and some numbers. We talked about integers, which are these nice, fancy looking, clean whole numbers here. And then we saw this floating point numbers, which is our decimals, okay? We changed some things around here in the onBegin function. You can play around with this and change any of these and it will work. And maybe you're thinking now, maybe there's a way in the game I could, put like something where I collect coins or collect money. And that's right. This is what you do. If we actually were building a real Fortnite game and we needed to collect coins or money or power-ups, we could literally have a variable called total money. And every time you pick it up and it detects it, you just add that onto your total amount. Okay, you could spend it as well too, which we'll cover later. So this is really, really cool stuff. And so what I want you to do, okay, I want you to build your very own exercise, okay? And it's time for you to make your own. So the exercise is create 5 more variables for an RPG character and print them to the screen. If you'd like to show your solution, you can do that in my Discord channel, or you can just do it on your own and pat yourself on the back. This one's not that hard, but go ahead and create 5 more variables and then print them to the screen. So that's it for now. Welcome to the world of Verse. There was so much more to come. If you didn't know, my name is Mark Wahlbeck, and you can watch the next video in this series right here. And don't forget to subscribe and click the bell so you can know when the next videos are released.